team.
Hey there, this is Malorian, and this is the Orc Tactical Team. And this question here comes from another viewer, comes from Snowweaver. And what his question is, hey Malorian, in my group here, I got this one guy who's running the lore life, and he's just walking over everybody. Every single time I play against him, he is winning the magic phase. And I just want to know, like, how can I shut this guy down? How do I stop his magic phase? And this is an interesting question because you get a lot of people that try and do this. They look across the table, they're looking at these spells coming at you, and you just want to shut them down. You want to say, hey, I got minus spell dice, and I'm going to stop everything. And really, right there, that's the mistake. The people that say, hey, I want to try and stop everything coming towards me are already in a losing battle. I mean, sure, sometimes you have the advantage where you have a level 4, maybe they have a level 1, maybe for yourself you have multiple scrolls, depending on what type of army you're from. You know, if you're Lizardman and you have the 2 different types of things to shut down a spell, maybe you have ways where you're getting more dispel dice, but for the most part, it's very simple math. You're each probably going to have the same level of caster, and then they're going to get 2d6 dice, and you're just going to get the top d6. So a lot of times they're having more dice than you. So the idea that you're going to go into a magic phase and shut them down, that doesn't really happen. I mean, on the one turn where you use that scroll, sure, that can really help you trying to shut them down. But otherwise, it can be very, very difficult, especially if they ever have the advantage on their side, right? If they ever have the level 4, or they're having the bonus to their cast, if they're having the Book of Hoeth, so they're re-rolling, right? Most of the time, it's just a simple thing. They have more dice than you. And so what it really comes down to is that you don't want to try and go and stop their entire magic phase. What you want to try and do is stop the important part of the magic phase. Let's take the Lore of Life. The Lore of Life can have a lot of very interesting spells. You could be putting the Throne of Vines out. You could be putting out the Thorns. You can be buffing the toughness of a unit. You can be doing Dwellers. You can be doing all these things, adding regen to yourself. But for the most part, there's very few things here that really, really matter. For example, if they are going and casting Throne of Vines, let them in a lot of cases. If they are using a lot of their dice and they're not going to have 6 dice left over after a Throne of Vines, maybe you just want to let them cast it because, sure, they won't suffer a miscast, but hey, you can always stop that spell on your own magic phase if you wanted to, and past that, it's the other spells that are going to really matter. Now, I made that significance there of whether they're going to have 6 dice or not, because what you can see other times is, especially in the early turns where you have a scroll, is what they're going to do is try and put out the Throne of Vines first, and then 6 dice a spell, knowing that if it's irresistible, you can't stop it, and meanwhile, they don't really care, right? The miscast is ignored on a 2+, and no big deal. But sometimes you have other parts too, right? Where, oh, they're going to try and over here, I'm going to try and do the Flesh to Stone spell. And you have to really decide, do I really care about stopping this? If the unit's not in combat, well, then the ball's in your own court, right? Sure, they're going to be very tough, and if I was to charge in, I wouldn't win. But do I really need to charge in? I'm not there. This isn't critical. Maybe they have the dice coming up later, and what their dice are going to try and do is they're going to try and 6 dice Dwellers or something like that. Well, okay, then with that part there, I want to be holding my dice to stop the Dwellers. So you always have to be more focusing on what's the more important spell. Hell, you know, it could be, given the dice, that even if they have enough to do their the Throne of Vines, and then do the big important spell after with 6 dice, maybe you just have to let that one go through anyway, because hell, even if I stop the Throne of Vines, they're still going to 6 dice that other spell anyway, and if I don't have that scroll, I might as well take the risk that they're not going to irresistible force, so I can throw all my dice to stop it. And that's one part where you actually do, as a defender in a magic phase, have the advantage. When you're casting, you can only throw up to 6 dice. That's the most you can throw. But as a defender, you can throw as many dispel dice as you want. If you went and channeled a few and you have 7 dice or whatever you have there, you can throw all 7, 8, whatever dice at trying to dispel. So in the whole game of trying to stop a single thing, you have the advantage. And in a lot of cases, that's really the way to go. Some other cases you can break down where that's not the point. Let's say where you're trying to stop somebody from raising, right? We're going up against vampire counts and they're going to be casting Invocation. But maybe they have multiple casters who all have Invocation. And really then you have to start really playing the numbers, saying, okay, you rolled this amount. What am I going to need to stop it? Do I want to stop this one? Or do I want to hold my dice because this was a high casting and I'm going to try and stop the other two? Or, oh, this is actually a little bit low and I can throw these dice to stop it. And then it's always a risky thing too, right? Where with this, all right, by average, if I throw my 2 dice at this, I should dispel this. And I'll have all my dice left over for the rest. But then what can happen is, hey, that's only on average. On the average, you will stop it. But what happens to all the rest? That means that you have a very high chance where it's not going to stop it. And then not only will that spell go through, well, also you can't use that level 4 anymore to be adding his way to be dispelling anymore. He'll lose concentration. So this can be a very big deal. And this is, again, makes you say, like, I just want to really make sure I stop the first 2, and sure, the third one might go through, but I have to go full in for these, otherwise I lose my advantage. Plus, you never know at what point they're going to get irresistible force later on, and hell, you know, if it's in that same case where you're looking at 3 invocations, I might as well go for these 2 here, because later on he might get an irresistible force that I can't stop anyway. Or, you know, maybe it'll be an easy thing where he'll get an irresistible force he doesn't want, lose dice, and he won't be able to cast anymore anyway. But I think it's that type of mentality that people then take and try applying it to everything. They're really saying that, okay, I have all these dice, you cast what? Okay, well, if I roll just these dice, I could stop this one. The next spell, I could try rolling these, and I could try and stop that spell, and then I can roll my scroll, and I can stop that spell as well. Ha ha! I destroyed and I shut down the magic phase. But in effect, what they've really done is 2 really bad things. One, they put a lot of risk on themselves. Like I said, when you're going and piecing out those dice, you're having that chance of failure. And again, it's not just the failure of you're casting this spell, it's also the idea that later on, I don't have that level 4 to stop things anymore, right? Now maybe I'll have a backup level 2. Who knows what else I have, but I've lost concentration. The second one is, you see this a lot of times in these early phases where, damn it, I'm going to shut down this magic phase. Dispel scroll. Take that, sucker. You get no magic. But really, that wasn't a very important magic phase. You know, this is an early phase. Maybe he was throwing out a fireball or something like that at one of your chaff. And you're like, bam, I stopped that. And something else, and I scrolled this. And it didn't really matter. I mean, usually that fast cav might be within the bubble. I don't know. But even if, let's say, you lost your fast cav, depending on what the situation is, who really cares? Would you rather try and stop losing your fast cav on the very first turn? Or do you want to hold on to that scroll to when you're actually fighting in combat and you really need to stop the really big spells, right? Like all of a sudden, like, you know, trying to stop that wild form in a combat or mind razor or whatever gets way more important than what you have in the early turns. So especially on turn 1 and even turn 2, really try and hold on to that scroll unless it looks like it's going to be very important. Like maybe they're trying to drop a Comet of Casadora on you, right? If they're doing that first turn, okay, maybe you want to use their scroll. If they move up and they're able to pull off a Dwellers on you first turn and they're trying to kill your characters, okay, you probably want to use that scroll. Unless you're in the chance there where, again, look at those dice and say, okay, he has this in his arsenal, right? If you're up against somebody who has this type of a spell, like Dwellers, which he can really threaten you with on the first turn, for God's sakes, hold your dice for it so that when he rolls those dice on the dwellers that you know he's going to try and cast, you can try and stop it. And it's one of these things where people will just throw their dice at things before then, and they won't think of the dwellers, and it's like, oh, damn it, he got dwellers off? Well, I have to use my scroll. But if they just would have held their dice for that actually important spell, then you can kind of see. And, sometimes it's not going to pay off. Sometimes you're going to hold your dice for that dwellers, and it turns out that maybe they got it with irresistible force, or maybe they just rolled really high. But in the long run, if you look over 1,000 games, you're better off holding those dice for that casting, knowing that, okay, you 6 dice this, well, I'm going to be able to maybe 7 dice it or whatever. I can watch and see maybe it'll fail. Maybe it's not a really good casting, so I can actually have a good chance of rolling with it. The numbers then are in your hand, right? Where you're deciding what are the odds of me throwing all my dispel dice and stopping this, and do I want to take that risk, or do I just want to scroll? As opposed to throwing away those dice in earlier spells and now saying, well, I have to scroll because it's my only way out. So really, that's what it comes down to. The whole idea that you need to go into a game and shut down all the magic, just get it out of your head and realize at the start of the game what their most important spells are. And I guess that's another tip I can really say too that a lot of people don't do is when people are at the start of the game and they're rolling for the spells, they're really just looking a lot of times at their own spells. Like, okay, oh good, I got Foot of Gork, I'm going to do this. I got Hand of Gork so I can move here. You should be paying equal interest into what spells they have. I don't know how many times I've had it where somebody is playing a game, somebody casts a spell, and the other guy's like, oh, what does that spell do? Or more often it's like, oh, I forgot that you even had that spell as well. No, at the start of the game, pay attention to what spells they have, and if you don't know what one of their spells do, ask. Make sure you know exactly what their spells do so that you know what you're holding your dice for. Otherwise, it'll be something like, oh, you have a magic missile that does 3d6 hits? Damn, that's strong. I better try and stop that. Oh, you just mind razored. Well, I really should have used my dice on that, right? These things come up. So make sure you really keep that in mind, know what's the really important spells, and just make sure you stop those. I mean, at the end of the day, they're spending lots of points on magic, right? You can't stop cannons. You can't stop shooting units. Those things just do damage. So accept that the hundreds of points they're spending on magic casters will do some damage, and then just try and mitigate it. So there you go. Very good question, and hope you enjoyed it. Catch you later. Bye.